we're so grateful to both Bela Ghandi and Dr. Julie Radlauer-Doerfler for giving their time and energy and expertise and sharing it with all of us. We have so much we're going to be taking away from this. So I'm going to pass it off to you, Nancy. You want to get things started here?
Absolutely. So Julie and Bela, we are going to ask you to just share some opening remarks and comment on this. So you both pursue very purposeful and rewarding work, helping others make meaningful relationships, whether intimate or to create stronger community. As a way to introduce yourselves, can you each share your inspiration for this career choice? What's unique or special about your approach, and what has been the most rewarding aspect or aspects of it? Julie, why don't you go ahead and start?
Thank you so much for having me here, and I really appreciated your opening remarks. It was very heartfelt, and so I'm grateful to be present with everybody today. So my name is Julie Radlauer, and I am a licensed mental health counselor, but also a doctor of public health. And so that combination of education has me focusing on the prevention of mental health conditions. I worked in the mental health space for a really long time and was really frustrated that people who were really struggling with their mental health would go see a therapist or couldn't even get in to see a therapist or couldn't find a good therapist and were seeking help, but they couldn't get support from the professional world. And so I began to look for alternative ways to address mental health. And that kind of dragged me into this space of focusing on social connectedness, mostly because I was looking for it in my own life. So I feel like as a person with, lived experience of seeking connection, and then now these days, and we're struggling with a global mental health crisis, and the Surgeon General has really identified that social connectedness is one of the reasons for that. And so what makes me unique about what I do is I do research. And then I turn that research into everyday actions that people can use. So not just, a book on the shelf, but then taking the pearls of wisdom from the book and turning it into actions and activities that we can all use every day in our world. So that's me.
Nice.
Awesome. Bela, how about you?
Sure. So grateful to be here and to see so many beautiful faces here. And I know there's beautiful faces that aren't on camera. So I grew up in a house with a dad that's a chemical engineer and an entrepreneur. And so if you and I need 3 or 10 words to get a point across, my dad usually could say it in 2. So one day I came home and there was a poster hung up in our family room. And I'm like, what is this? And it was just a janky black metal frame. And it was titled The 21 Suggestions for Success in Life. I'm like, okay, this is typical my dad. It's going to say, study hard, get straight A's, be a doctor, lawyer, and engineer, typical Indian kid. And so, but it said, rule number 1, marry the right person. This one decision will determine 90% of your happiness or 90% of your misery. Side note, this poster was authored by a man named H. Jackson Brown. You can still buy it online. And so I thought, wow, if this is the number one thing in life, I love rom-coms. I read every romance novel I could get my hand on, was always the girl that had lots of boyfriends. But in college, I was in a particularly red flag, bad boy relationship, on, off, 2 years. When I finally landed on my back with looking up, going, what happened? I sat down to do what every good finance and business student would do an analysis. And what I started to see is the common denominator in a lot of these messes was me. So I started reading, researching, looking at relationships. I put together my own little model. I started dating someone I had been friends with for 6 years. We've now been married for 27 years. My college roommate, who watched me put this model together, is now married because of this methodology. So even when I went out, I started working in management consulting, in M&A. Then I went to family business in manufacturing. And because I have this other degree in German, I went to Europe to start our business. But all the while I was teaching people this method, and the company that bought my family's company kept me on for 5 years post-acquisition until 2006. But I don't know if you guys have had this, but there, that little voice inside of you that says you're supposed to do something else. So I left AkzoNobel in 2006, put my spine in, was terrified to bring this to the world, started Smart Dating Academy. And I can say now in retrospect, it was scary as hell. But today, best decision ever, besides picking the right partner for me. And what we've done, so Smart Dating Academy, some of you are familiar with it, others might be new to us. We're a full kind of a dating and relationship strategic coaching company. So we have a methodology to help people look for what we call high GPQ people, high and good partner qualities. And we have a process to do that. We do one-on-one high-end coaching for our clients. We wrap them in bubble wrap and we protect people from getting dinged up during the process. But what happens when you take a nerdy finance student? We have graphs as to what healthy relationship trajectories look like, lists of red flags by phase of dating. So we teach and we coach people along the way through phase one, which is dating and putting yourself out there over, kind of maximizing the quality of connections you're getting. And then phase two is once you get into a relationship, is this a happy, healthy relationship? So the most rewarding part of what I do is just getting the texts from people about this really helped me, this inspired me, and of course, the hundreds of wedding invitations and even baby announcements we get. This is the food that feeds me. I love, love, love helping people and can't imagine doing anything else.
That's fantastic. It's interesting. I remember the conversation that we had, as I was mentioning back in the chat, about the story you told about how your approach about when people come to you and the lists that you, the process that you go through, the list that you help them make. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's one of the parts of, kind of finding the whole high and good partner qualities person that we go through with people. So for those of you who don't know, we have our clients make a list of, and I'll just talk about women for a second, and women looking for men. Who is your dream guy? And so I'll tell you, after doing thousands of these dream guy analyses, the number one thing that women say in their dream guy, I won't make you guess, it's tall. Ideally, over 6 feet tall, right? And so, side note, only 14% of men in the US are over 6 feet tall. So we have them put together a dream list, but then we switch to a second question and we say, who are the people in your life that really make you happy? We call them elevator people because they elevate you. And so we go through this process with every single client that has come through the doors at Smart Dating Academy over the last 15 years. And we look at the people in their lives that make them happiest and do an analysis, not, my best friend Trina, because she's chic and smart and went to Harvard. No, what does this person give to you in this relationship that makes you happy? And we parse through person by person, we come up with the theme. And so that is the first shift in what we do to help people start to look for partners that can make you happy. And I can tell you, doing it in this way, it's not quick, it's not easy, it takes a while, and there's speed bumps to finding love. But in the last 15 years, we've had 0 divorces, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's impressive. I think I'll never forget my therapist who I thanked, who said, let's focus on the menu pick, right? Because after, one failed marriage and a fiance, I had to, thankfully, he helped me move away from that relationship. It wasn't them, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
Sometimes we have to fix our own people pickers.
Yeah. And I'm just, Julie, I know that, there's research that shows that loneliness is an epidemic, right? that and that impacts so much of our well-being. Can you talk a little bit about, just again, the importance of staying connected, being connected, social connectedness, as you say, to kind of ward off the loneliness that so many people feel?
I think that's a really good question. When I was listening to Bella's description of, who are the people that make you happy, I was wondering what some of those qualities were that kind of jump out the most, because I imagine some of it is about somebody I can connect with, somebody that I can have the conversations or those kind of intimate conversations with. So for me, that's where my mind went. Maybe again, that's what I'm, looking for in my relationships, is to, be able to connect with people. And I think that, what's happened in our society makes it difficult to do so. Years ago, we had 3 strong ties or strong connections in our lives, like people we could really count on. And now the research demonstrates that we're somewhere between 1 and 2.
Wow.
And a lot of that is because of our society and how we tend to move away from our families. Right. Like your parents live in one place and you live somewhere else. Your parents live in Florida and you live up north, or something to that effect. Or social media and having access to the smartphone is something that has really created, a disconnect in the world. And also the way we live. People used to live in a more collective type environment, where intergenerational families lived in the same home, and now it's single family homes. And so these are things that have happened, over the last decades that have resulted in where we are right now, which is this loneliness epidemic that you mentioned, where 1 out of every 2 people experiences loneliness. And so that's something that, and I don't say like, oh, how many of you have experienced loneliness? Because pretty much everybody has at some point in their life. It's just a matter of, are you able to function with it? And what are you going to do about it? And what can you do? Because you can be in a room full of people and be lonely. You can be in marriage and be lonely. All of those things. So a lot of it is about what we've been talking about, which is like, look at ourselves to figure that out.
Thank you.
I also find that how we've been working since the pandemic has contributed to that, because that also doesn't just result in loneliness, but also adversely affects engagement with your coworkers, and how important engagement is in terms of forming a corporate culture. So it really just hits on every side for sure.
Such a good
So
point.
interesting. Yeah. So interesting you said. I was doing a presentation last week at a local university. And before the presentation started, somebody was in the room early. And so she and I were just kind of engaged in conversation as I was setting myself up. And she mentioned something about how she loves working from home. She's such an introvert. She hates the days that she has to go into the office. She's in her pajamas all day long. And she was talking about this in such a positive way. And then as I went through my presentation about social connectedness, she said, I gave them all an assessment tool. And so she took the assessment tool and she said, I scored terribly on this tool. And by the end of the presentation, she was in tears, because she realized that the thing that she loved so much, having her freedom at home and a pajama day and all of that really was inhibiting her ability to connect with people outside of the person that lives in her home, which is her partner. So you're right, Kimberly, for pointing that out. Thank you.
I think that's a big issue, something we have to address as a hybrid organization, to really intentionally create specific segments. Every Monday at 12, we come together and we have a reading or a podcast, and we are very vulnerable and talking about relationships. Building, right now we're reading Tiny Habits. So building tiny habits, and we share in our personal lives how we're implementing that, or in a work environment. These are all new barriers we have to building relationships. And I see that with our younger colleagues. And so we really try to build that internally. What are some strategies, whether people here are HR professionals or leaders in organizations, or building that personally? How do they? What are some things you can suggest? I guess Julie, want to start, and then Bella, you can talk about in a relationship perspective.
Sure. I think I love what you were saying, because for me, there's 9 science-based elements that we need in order to connect, or can help us make those connections. And the first one that you mentioned is intentionality, right? So you're intentionally creating opportunities where people can get together, be vulnerable, have conversation. But if we don't pay attention to it, the whole day can go by and we can still be sitting here on our computers, not talking to other humans. So, just being intentional is important. Proximity. So having access to people, being in workspaces with people is really important. Connectivity, commonality, finding things that you have in common with people is a great way to help people build connections. So if you live near each other or something to that effect, vulnerability, which you mentioned, is just, being comfortable, being uncomfortable for a minute, really bonds and builds connection. Being dependable. So dependability is another one. Reciprocity, which we heard kind of come up earlier. Being flexible. We want things a certain way, but if we're not flexible, it breaks connection. If I only want it my way, you don't see it my way, well, then we're done. So now I'm not connected to you anymore. So that flexibility is important. And then being positive. It's really hard to be around somebody who's constantly being negative and pulling you down. So those are some of the science-based elements that I kind of incorporate into the work that I do.
Those are great. Yeah. Bella, how about you in bringing in the intimate aspect of it? What are some of the barriers?
Oh, some of the barriers for sure are, I think, the way we're thinking about connections, especially in the dating world, right? And I think one of the biggest things is having this mindset of scarcity. There's no good people left out there. The apps have, avoidance and icky, degenerate people. And so if we come into this with this mindset of, I don't like dating, it's never worked for me, there's no good people out there, the best metaphor that I give my clients for what happens is I can say to them, let's say, for example, Missy, I could say, I want you to walk into a cocktail party and take a little notebook and a pen and look for all the people that are wearing red. And Missy would come back to me, did her homework, and said, okay, Bella, there's 11 people that are wearing red. Then I'll ask her the second question. How many people were wearing purple? She's like, well, I don't know. You asked me to look for people that were wearing red. So there's 11. And so the same thing can happen in the dating world. When we think there's no good people out there, when we have dating fatigue, maybe we've been on the apps too long, we're just not in a positive mindset, there's almost no way to ensure that you're going to see good people that are coming your way. Every day, as part of our jobs with our team, is we're in our clients' inboxes helping to see who's good and who might have red flags. And so a lot of times I'll get in there and say, hey, well, what about this person? Let's say Michael. Oh, and our client will say, I don't know why I didn't message him back. And it was probably because you had something bad happen during the day. Maybe you got a bad text from your mom or your boss and you weren't in a good mindset. So you missed a good person that came your way. So I think mindset is so important. So the corollary to that, what we teach is an attitude of what we call psychotic optimism. I know I said the word psychotic, but go with me for a second. I didn't invent it. A friend of mine, we were having lunch and she's like, you are a psychotic optimist. Because she asked me, do you believe that love exists for everybody? I said, every single person on this planet that wants love can have love. We're all worthy of love. And there's a lid to your pot. She's like, you are a psychotic optimist. So it's about reframing your mentality, saying love is going to come to me. It's a when, it's not an if. Even when dating can feel like it's raining men or women, hallelujah, or it's going to feel like the Sahara Desert at times. It's continuing to stay on the journey because you know that love is going to come to you. So mindset, just like in every aspect of our lives, I'm sure we've all been through this, mindset determines so much of how we come to the process of connections.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think I have to be really honest. The person I was engaged to, that was a fear-based relationship. I was afraid of aging solo and alone, and I stayed in it. And then I got stuck in it. And so I like to talk about fear because I think people aren't even aware. Sometimes it's this underlying fear that they're not even aware is existing. And then they're making bad choices, scarcity mindset versus, if I just use the positive affirmations that Nancy's so good at doing in her life to just cultivate that. And then I didn't get out of it fast enough, so help people not have my experience. If you could both talk about how to deal with those fears, overcoming fears, so that we don't sabotage our success and happiness.
You go first.
Want to take it, Julie?
Sure.
I'll take it. I mean, I love what Bella was saying about confirmation bias, where it's like, I think something's going to happen, so then it becomes your truth. I think that's really important, is like, so we have control over that. And so how do you overcome fear? Well, take a deep breath, mustering up the courage, taking a risk, a small risk. I also loved Bella saying we put people in bubble wrap. Yeah, because the reason that we don't do things is that fear of getting hurt when we're making a connection with somebody. And there's no guarantees in life. So recognizing, okay, this is a risk, but it's a small, manageable risk, something that I can, also having self-awareness. So this is something that is difficult for me. I'm going to give it a try one time and then I'll reassess. So small baby steps, being aware of what your triggers are, taking a deep breath and just, I do a lot of work with people with anxiety. And so we have to talk about what is the smallest baby step that you can possibly take and still be moving towards your goal. And so doing just that, I mean, for some of you who are looking for connection or relationship, just being here on this call today
Is actually,
it's a baby step, right? Taking the time to invest in yourself, to recognize, to own up to, this is an area of my life that I need some support in, and then seeking knowledge. That's a beautiful thing. Now, what you do with the knowledge is the next baby step.
I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
I think your brain, because you're a scientist, right? The science is your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what you tell it. So tell it the good stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's Bella, I don't know, did you want to answer that question as well about fears?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many fears, and I don't know how many of you are on this call looking for a relationship or maybe have been in the dating world, but there's so many fears. For some people, it's fears about themselves, right? I have a bad picker. And sometimes people know that implicitly, or there's that intuition inside saying, I've got a bad picker. How am I going to do this? And how do we get bad pickers? I almost wonder how people get good pickers, right? Without help, right? Because the messages that society tells us, in social media, like, oh, you should feel butterflies in your stomach after a date. That's great, right? Like, butterflies in your stomach are bad. It's your body getting anxious, telling you there are red flags, get out of Dodge, danger, Will Robinson, right? So it's the fear of having a bad picker. And maybe you've been in bad relationship after bad relationship, bad marriage after bad marriage. I had a woman come to us years ago. Her story is actually on our website. This part of the story is not on there. She had been married 4 times before she came to us. And she said, I don't even know if you would work with someone like me. I'm like, of course we would. Love is out there for you. By the way, she's now in a 5th. She got married. I'm like, this is the last time. And it's been amazing because we watched the whole process develop. But for her, it was fear of disclosing her story. And I know so many of us, especially as the years go by, the decades go by, we all carry little bags or maybe trunks with us of things in our mind that we tell ourselves like, oh, no, people are going to think I'm broken or I'm damaged or nobody's going to accept me because, and the sheer fact of the matter is, that's a story that you're telling yourself. And even if somebody said that to you one time, who cares? Bless and release them. That is not your truth. every single person walking around the world has invisible baggage. So take that negative story that you have and get it out of your head and reseed it to a positive one. Because trust me, there's so many mind monkeys that jump around our brains causing chaos and fear. So, these are just a few. I could talk about fears and dating for an hour.
Well, it's interesting because, just going back to, first of all, I think, love is a birthright, right? And everyone is worthy of love. And to your point, it's not, if, but when.
Yeah.
And just going back to, the importance of a mindset, I think in maintaining healthy connections and relationships, whether they're friendly or intimate, so I'm single. I've been single since 2005. And I get asked all the time why I don't date. And I have to change my mindset because, and I'll share this with you, that my mindset is, oh my God, dating is like another job. And that's going on, I've never been on an app. I've never, because that's my mindset. But if as I've talked about earlier in the chat, investing the time is what's most important, if that is important to you. But I've got to, I'm hearing your comments about mindset. And for years, I have said to myself, that's another job. And I don't, after working all day and being online and working with, clients or whatever, being on the phone, the last thing I want to do is go scrolling through an app.
So yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things people always come to us saying like, oh my God, this is a job, and then I'll say, well, how many dating apps are you on? And they're like 6. And I can't find anyone. I'm like, first of all,
my God,
no wonder it feels like a job. At Smart Dating, we have a whole process before anybody even gets on an app. We go through the whole find your high GPQ person, the red flags. We do a photo shoot. I wrote a book during COVID that produces a good profile. We help to edit it. But now, let's say you're out there and you're doing this on your own. What I would tell you is you've got to put some work into this. Anything big that you want in your life, you want to have a plan, right? And then take small, like you guys, Julie, I think you said baby steps to get there on a daily basis. So what I would tell you, Nancy, is what I tell my clients: shut off the notifications. I'm going to put you on one dating app to begin with. No notifications during the day. Do it 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening. That's it. And that's your dating time. But you've done a lot of planful, mindful stuff before that. But then during that time, you're only going to message that much on a daily basis. Nobody goes on more than 2 dates a week. Hashtag video dates count as dates with us. So there's a whole process to doing it, because I tell people, I don't want this to feel like a job to you. I want to make this as fun as dating can be. And we do make it fun, but we still have to take actions around it, because it's sometimes, again, folklore that people tell you is, oh, when it's meant to be, it's just going to happen. Don't work so hard at it, right? You're working too hard in dating. When would anybody give you that advice? If you were looking for a job, would they tell you, you know what, just sit on your sofa and the perfect job opportunity is going to come to you? Never, right? And so making it manageable so that it doesn't feel like a job. And just, I want you to enjoy your life and have a good life. Put time into friends and family and working out and good nutrition and your hobbies and spending time with people you love, because the more joyful you are, the more people you will attract in.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop breaking out in hives right now from that.
Nancy,
So
I'm going to have a follow-up with Nancy.
I know, Barbara.
Sorry that I gave you hives, Nancy.
I know. Sorry.
When Nancy first moved to Chicago from New York, she was living with me, and we'd get online and we would get a glass of wine on Friday nights, and we would howl, and she'd help me respond to different.
So Barbara was on the dating app.
Yeah, not Nancy. Not, God forbid Nancy would be. But there's a lot of people on the call here who are in relationships, and gray divorce is a big issue, right? And so, or people looking to build stronger community. Help us understand. We have a good relationship. We get into some patterns that are not great patterns. How do we help strengthen that relationship, to really get it in a more fulfilling way, and to maybe try to get rid of some of those unhealthy, passive aggressive might be a word to use, those unhealthy patterns. Julie,
Julie, you
jump
want
in
to
and go
start off?
first.
Okay, sure. I think one thing that's really important about that is being able to identify and recognize and communicate what your needs are. That's really important. And we talked about it earlier in terms of listening and active listening. I heard something the other day. I was listening to a podcast, and they said when you're when you're communicating with somebody, you're trying to have a connection with somebody, and they're coming to you with a need. It's really important for you as the listener to recognize, does this person want to be heard? Do they want to be helped? Or do they want to be hugged? And I really loved that. I was like, that's really stuck with me, because I thought, well, that's exactly right. If we're trying to be a good listener, we have to understand what is the person that's communicating with us. What is their need? Not what do I want to do? Because I want to fix it. That's, I know that's my need, that's what I do, but what do they need at that time? And I think that will help strengthen relationships. If we can learn to be really good listeners, which is where we started with, right? Because that was one of the first things that Barbara said. I think also, and as we do this, as we get older, we do this just kind of seems like naturally, organically, is taking inventory of who our connections are and recognizing which are the ones that are positive, which ones do I want to spend time with, which ones are not. And people tend to just slowly kind of slough off if they're not meant for us. I absolutely love, Bella, what you said, bless and release. Like, that's a beautiful thing. May I steal that from you, because that just really spoke to me. I'll give you credit. But yeah, I mean, I think that's important, is recognizing that, as different people, we have different needs and different aspects of our lives. One of the things that I do in my work is we give people an assessment, and the assessment looks at all the different aspects of your life, your social connections, your social support, your social capital, how you manage social media, all the different, and then you look at each one of these areas and say, where do I need some support, or where do I need some help? Where do I need to hone in on and intentionally create more connection, more support, or more capital? And so I think it's recognizing that, and then just being intentional, those baby steps. I'm going to go right back to it, and taking having a little courage and taking the risk to do something maybe different. Yeah.
It's ironic, especially during the pandemic, it made me realize that I fill my calendar just to fill my calendar. And I realized, wait, I'm going to these events. What is this, for my ego to be in the room, or what am I really getting from this group or this event? And say no. Someone said earlier, no is a complete sentence, right? That's a complete response. And part of that is, I don't need quantity. I need to pause and really invest in, that's what's fulfilling. That quantity can feel good. It's a big rush, but then it leaves you even almost more alone sometimes than fulfilled, because there's can be such an emptiness.
And I always say, Barbara, and you and I talk about this all the time, saying no to something gives you the chance to say yes to something or someone that really matters,
Yeah.
Right.
How about you, Bella? How about in relationships? What do you think are some things to get rid of unhealthy patterns?
I think number one, it's doing a self-assessment first on what are my unhealthy patterns. How do I react when I'm annoyed? Right? Like, I can tell you a personal story. Like, this is my office at home that we made during COVID. And I have a husband of 27 years who's lovely. And sometimes he works from home, and other days when he doesn't. So the days he works from home, sometimes I'm in my flow, in my zone, I'm working. And out of the corner of my eye, I can see him walk into my office, and then he just is staring at me. And I'm like, okay. So in the beginning, I used to be like, okay, what does he need? We just talked. I've got to get this done. And so I could feel like my blood pressure rising a little bit, but then I did a self check. I'm like, this is a you problem. This is not a him problem. So now we talked about it, and talk about these things during peacetime, not wartime, in your relationships. It's like, when you walk into my office and you don't say anything and you're just staring at me, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. And so he's like, oh, no, not at all. Like, I just come in to say hi. So now we have made it into a little joke. When he walks in, he never changed. He does the same thing even after these chats. He walks in, but my response now, I'll look at him with a smile on my face. I'm like, do you need attention?
Right. Totally.
That's it. And it's now become a joke. Do you need attention? Nope. Just saying hi. Right. And so, because I had to self-check on that, the stories I was telling myself were all the wrong stories. And so now that I have softened myself, I would say, is that a him problem or is that a me problem? That was a me problem. And that's how we solved the problem.
Yeah.
God.
I love that. You know, I
Yeah.
have had to learn, in past relationships, I would get shut down if I felt a partner didn't respond a way to meet my needs. And now I'm like, honey, I really need a big hug right now. I ask, I'm like, Barbara, get your needs met, like just help. There's so many great qualities that my partner has. And sometimes he's not doing, his love language is so different than mine. So get your needs met, ask for what you need.
Absolutely. And that can be in all relationships, right? Sometimes a
Right.
friend can call us and we want to, and they're like, oh, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, right? And everybody says, listen, don't advise. But it gets really hard to do that because we want to help. So what I've found to be a good strategy in any relationship is ask that person before you start talking. It's like, what kind of friend do you want me to be right now? Do you want me to listen? Do you want feedback? And that person will tell you what you want. And what's so interesting is what I found is when you ask it in that way, most people will say, oh, I want your feedback on this. But it's the simple fact that you thought to ask, do you want me to just listen or do you want counsel, is game changing in so many of our relationships. I'm the mother of 2 teenagers as well.
Yeah. Oh, well, don't even
Yeah.
get me there.
Yeah.
Mom, just listen.
Oh my
And
God.
Julie, I think you have 3 or something, right?
I have 3, and I'm
Yeah.
looking in the chat, and the whole empty nester, finding new friends, speaks to me.
Yeah.
Well,
Because I have
if you look at the
3,
blue
so.
zones, right? Longevity is so linked to great community. And
Totally.
it's so important. And I know there's a lot of people on the call who are in that phase. They're in the midst of empty nesting. Some have retired, whatever that means to them. They're not working full-time, crazy hours. How do you help? Some people make decisions around where to move. Is this an environment I want to be in? So why don't we talk a little bit more about building community and connection when you're an empty nester, as well as maybe in a new place, either of those.
Putting, I can't type and talk at the same time, but I'm putting the 9 elements into the chat because I think that it kind of answers that question. And I wanted you guys to have it just in tangible form. So if I'm feeling like, oh, I need to find a new group of people, I need to find my new community. My children are going away, and now their parents, we don't have the same thing in common, which is our children being at home. So one of the things that you can do is think about, what are your interests? What were your interests before children? What are your interests now? And then try to find some kind of club, group, organization where you have that in common. So if I like art and it's just been something that I dabble in, but now that I have a little more free time, maybe I want to look and to find an art class. And it might be an art class where it's in the evening and there's wine involved. And so I would go find that art class. And who else is going to be at that art class? People my age who also want to drink wine while they do art. And you know what? We're going to have lots in common because we both love art and wine, apparently. And then we're going to make that connection. So it's trying to identify what are the things that I like or used to like back in the day, and how can I bring some of that into my life to hopefully find like-minded people who have similar interests. that's
Love
something to, again, intentionally. Like, so if you have to like intentionally really think about it, because people that I talk to will say, I have no idea what I like. I don't even know who I am at this point anymore.
Right.
I don't know what my passions are. And, I used to like scrapbooking. I'm not going to go find a scrapbooking group or whatever, and so it takes a little digging. Like some of the work that Ella does is like, let's really dig in there and find out what are those interests and passions. But once you can identify them, then try to find your people, because that's where you will make the connection, is through common shared interests.
And it starts with self-reflection, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Bella, how about you?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's such good advice, that Julie's giving so many women that we work with, that are coming to the dating world. It's like, what do you love to do? Well, I don't really know, because I've taken care of so many people in my life that I've sort of extinguished who I was. So it's thinking about maybe the things that brought you joy when you were a kid, right? Things like the things that you enjoy or potentially would enjoy or like to learn. And I love that idea, even going to meetup groups, things in your community. There's so many Facebook groups that people make friendships off of. And one other thing on the dating apps, which is interesting, and you don't have to necessarily be single to do this, but on Bumble, which is one of the top 3 dating apps, there's a toggle to a section called BFF for women, where women can connect with other women that are on the app to make friends. So when I've been on the BFF site and looking at other women, I'm like, oh my God, I want to go on a date with her and her and her, because there's so many amazing women out there. So that's an idea to be a little bit more laser focused with people. And the good thing about the dating apps is you can see what somebody's written about themselves. You can see what age they are, what neighborhood they live in, what interests they have. So that's another idea for you to build. Nobody can have too many friends, right? And sometimes we go through those seasons of our lives where we've had to prune out certain people, bless and release certain friends that, haven't been good to us or whatever. So I like BFF is another good way to think about doing that.
That's great. I think that's so important is that self-reflection. But so we're managing our time, and I see we've got 7 minutes left. So I'm going to do a real quick lightning round because we're all about helping women take action from these programs. So Julie, 3 actions that we can take today to strengthen our emotional and mental well-being when cultivating relationships.
So identify the things that you like or you're interested in, and just take one little risk to connect in that way. I would say pay attention to the people that are in your circle, because maybe we've fallen off with people, or we've gotten a little bit, too busy in our workspace. So who are the people that used to bring you joy, and reconnect with those people? I always say, like, just literally pick up the phone right now, your cell phone, and send a quick text to somebody that you haven't talked to in the last 2 months that you really wish you could connect with. Just do something like that. So it's just right now in the moment, and try to reconnect. And then also do a little bit for yourself. I mean, I know that we want to make these connections, but that self-reflection and that inner work, as Bella said, it brings us joy, it makes us happier, which then we attract people. So do the things that make you happy, whether you do them with others or by yourself, that be in nature, the awe of, going to the beach or the mountains or something like that. Do something like that for yourself.
Love that.
Thank
I
you.
love that. I really, those little steps and that little courage, it's so empowering, right? And it makes the next decision, the next step, so much easier. Bella, how about you? If you want to share 3 tips for finding the person that you maybe would like to spend the rest of your life with, or that you want to keep spending the rest of your life with.
Right. So with regards to finding that person, if you're out there, I hope that something, even a little spark of what I said, sparked you to think about, okay, I could get back into the dating pool again. So the first thing, if that's the case, that you're inspired to do that, have a plan of how you're going to do this. And that plan should involve the three big pipelines of meeting people that I talk about. Number one is using the apps or technology. That's how you're going to meet a lot of people. Number two is meeting people IRL, in real life, out in the wild, as people are calling it now, but joining those groups, doing things that make you happy. Put your phone down, look at people, make 3 seconds of eye contact and smile at people. You literally will be surprised at how many people will look back at you and smile, and maybe there'll be somebody cute that catches your eye. And then the third one is getting set up by people. Now, build a dating board of directors for yourself. Think about the people in your life that are extroverted. They like connecting people. They're just those people that have a lot of connections. Nominate them to be on your dating board of directors. And if they accept the esteemed position of being on your dating board, they get to set you up on one date this year. So that's how you get people to actually think about and also prioritize you in the world of setups.
Love that.
I love all of that advice and all of those actions. And so I'm going to dig deep down into my bold, courageous self and make this a priority for 2024. And actually coming into the year, it was an intention. We've had some other things go, that have redirected us or redirected me and Barbara. But so anyway, I'll keep you all posted. So I want to just pause and thank Bela and Julie for joining us today. Great conversation. It was totally organic and redirected a couple of times, but we really hope that all of you found value from this.